Welcome back to Morehead City Politics. My name's Judah. This is Jeff. Hey, Jeff. How you doing today?
Hey, how you doing? Good evening.
We're
And
excited because you've got someone you're bringing on tonight to interview to kind of give us some insight on the ins and outs of law enforcement, huh?
yes, so I thought my uncle Steve, who is right now, he's retired up in Idaho. Hopefully you don't mind me saying that. Maybe I shouldn't say all that. Try to give his position away. Anyway, I thought he'd be a good source of expert opinion based on his over 35 years in law enforcement.
Okay.
And being with the sheriff's department and, retiring as a senior investigator. And like I said, he's just had so many years and, he's worked for a couple of different agencies, but, he worked for the sheriff's department for a while. And I figured since we're having our sheriff election coming up soon, and also that we'll be talking with candidates hopefully soon, that he would be a good source of information and expert opinion and advice maybe on what we should ask and what we should be looking for in a sheriff. So
let's bring him on.
Without further ado, here he is.
Hello, Mr. Steve. How are you doing today?
Great. How are you guys doing?
Not too bad.
Doing great.
We're excited to have you on. One of the things that we've realized doing this is that, or I can only speak for myself, is that I don't know much about especially local politics. And it behooves us to bring on people, talk to people, interview people that are involved, but also that know about it, experts like you that can come on and give us some insight. And I know you don't know the candidates around here. You're not from this area in North Carolina, but I mean, the office is, what would you say, would you say, Steve, is that the office is not that different from state to state, is it? Office of sheriff, the police department, those sort of things.
Well, as far as enforcing the law and working with the community, it's the same, should be the same nationwide. The only difference, and I hate to say it, but would be the politics that inevitably get involved.
And Jeff, that's where you came. You came in last time, or a couple of weeks ago, when we started talking about the sheriff, when you said, what, we have party affiliation for the sheriffs. And it kind of surprised me as well. What was that about when you realized that?
I just didn't realize that. For some reason, I guess I assumed, and you know what happens when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. By the way, that's an Uncle Steve quote for many years growing up with his children. I never realized it, but I mean, I should gather, just based on watching TV around the nation, you can see that there's definitely partisan politics involved in law enforcement, which in my opinion, it shouldn't be. Like, kind of same with the military. If you're the boots on the ground, everybody kind of has their opinion, right? Justice is supposed to be blind, which means you shouldn't openly be involving your own political opinion or ideologies into the enforcement of law. I don't see how you can be, what would the word be, objective or not, does that make sense?
Yeah, like, what about that, Steve?
If you're skewed one way or the other too much, I mean, I'm not just like talking like, I think that everybody should just get a free pass on everything. But I think if you're too far on one side, you're obviously going to be skewed on how you enforce the law, and that it should be obviously enforced in the most fair, direct manner that it serves the best public interest, not the political interest. I guess that's all I'm saying.
Surprisingly enough, in my over 35 years, I really didn't see that much come into play as far as decisions that were made either in the field by patrol deputies and even all the way up through the prosecution phase from a district attorney's office. You're playing with hot water there, walking on a very thin rope. And that would be one of the last things whether it's a police department or a sheriff's office, that you want the public to think that things are being controlled by politics. And you lose a lot of credibility when that starts happening. So once again, in an ideal world, keep the politics out of it, especially on the lower, the patrol level, but it's going to get involved. You can't keep it out once you get into the administrative part of law enforcement. You know, like I said, previously the sheriff is voted in by the people of the community, and a chief of police he takes a test and goes before the city council or whatever form of city government they have, and it's determined by a group of folks that think he's the best for that community. So both of those positions are clearly involved in politics. You just can't get out of it once it gets that high.
But why is it so different between the sheriff and the chief of police? Like, are they drastically different in how they administer the law?
Well, to take into consideration that sheriff is voted in by the community. That's who that community desires to be the head law enforcement agency within that county. A city chief, basically, I hate to think it, but however how big the city government or the city council is, it's left up to them who they want for a chief, and that could be either a Democrat or a Republican. That's just the way it is.
That makes sense. Is it because I guess partially the sheriff has it's more involved with the unincorporated areas of the township or what have you?
Well, and that all depends on how big the county is. There's a lot of counties within the United States that the unincorporated area is as highly populated, if not bigger, than some of the cities. And for each individual city, you're going to have an individual chief. But the sheriff covers the whole county. And once again, that sheriff depends on those votes when it comes up for reelection, or if he's going to maybe retire out or go someplace else. Whoever is following him, if the sheriff is going to support him, then he's got to have a good track record, or nobody's going to want to vote, not only if he tries to run again, or for whoever he's supporting for a new sheriff position.
Jeff, what did you find out? We found out when we were doing some more, I guess you'd say, just putting some study work into finding out about the sheriffs that are running in our county. There were some things that came up.
So, yeah, one thing that you mentioned, and I did look it up, and this is off of Shane Guthrie for Sheriff, his website, that just talks about born and raised in Carteret County, and it goes on to talk about his one of the things that he wants to implement a domestic violence prevention unit. That's always good, and I think again, my uncle can talk more about stuff like that, but I think that's, if I'm not wrong, it's one of the probably most dangerous calls that you guys have to go on, right? Or domestic violence calls. So hopefully, I guess maybe figuring something out in a way to address those. But the other thing I guess that's been brought up is that he wants to utilize an AI tracker to more efficiently and expediently identify registered sex offenders. So instead of, I guess, taking 4 hours, it would take a few minutes. I obviously we need to know, and a lot of them. Again, maybe my uncle can elaborate a lot more on those, but I think that, getting those guys to comply to register sometimes seems like a lot of them. I don't know, again, how those numbers work, and maybe this is stuff my uncle can comment on a lot better than me, because I don't know really what the statistics are on that. And as far as locating them, and I'm not, by any means do I not condone, obviously, sex offenders. Sometimes I get nervous about stuff like this, because I look at like, well, inherently they create these programs, and I want to use like the Patriot Act for instance. Well, the Patriot Act, came up because it had to deal with, 9/11 and anti-terrorism. And then whether you like the guy or not, Edward Snowden exposed a bunch of stuff that basically, I mean, they're listening to everything you say on the phone, and that's not just like tinfoil hat stuff, right? And I think all of that is through the Patriot Act. And when does it become a slippery slope to say, well, we're using it for this, and it just seems like, I guess, regardless, there's always going to be someone that misuses some type of source of information or something you can use to track people or to find people. And maybe that's maybe when hopefully I get to talk to Mr. Guthrie here, and we could talk to him more about that and this week, and find out maybe some of the in and outs about the system, that maybe ease people's mind on that. What's your
I
opinion?
think that would be that. First, I want to say that will be an important thing to ask him about, but I want to hear about what you have to say, Steve.
Well, I don't know how the system works in North Carolina, but where I previously worked for over 35 years, we really didn't have a problem with notification, or there would be a list that would come out with any registered sex offender that would be within our radio system that dispatch would have at their availability. And if you ran someone, if you stopped, you were talking to somebody, or there were a suspect, it would come up that either he's a registered sex offender, and if he hadn't registered, there's probably a warrant out for his arrest. So that doesn't take that long to get that information, and it's pretty accurate information, because that would come from the parole office. And they stayed up on that stuff, because it's like you guys, nobody wants a registered sex offender around where there's going to be issues with children, and whether it's schools or any place else. So I don't quite understand why, or what AI would do any faster than picking up your radio mic and running an individual, or getting on the phone, and calling dispatch, whatever. They're going to come right back and tell you. It's not a huge, they don't have to go to a big hand file. It's all right there. So I don't, I guess I would have to have, if I was curious, would ask, how is that more beneficial than the current system?
Well, I think that's a great question to ask. I see you grabbing your pen, Jeff. That's definitely, how is it more beneficial? I assume that it has the ability to scour many more networks of internet traffic and internet conversations much faster. So I'm sure we can do that now, but the AI is able to do multiple hundreds of things at the same time.
Well, that's, and I guess in my question, like, I think kind of piggybacking on maybe just off of some things my uncle mentioned, is I'm like, well, one, do you know, is the sex offender registry, is that a national registry, or is it just state by state?
It's either state by state, or it can go national. But, for example, if a guy is a non-registered, and he's left the state of North Carolina, and he winds up in California, I guarantee you, if they run him in California, or or Idaho, or it's going to come up. There's going to be a hit on there that this guy hasn't registered, and he would be immediately arrested, and then they would hang on to him until North Carolina made arrangements to get him back there. So again, we're talking about the speed of talking on the radio. It's,
Yeah.
And that was always a priority. I don't care where you're at, what state you're in. Those guys just don't fly around and they're forgotten about. As soon as they don't show up to their parole officer or whatever the state protocol is, it goes out. And I mean, a warrant is put out for their arrest, period.
Well, I imagine a lot of people are scared just at the mention of AI, just because of how uncertain everything is about it. And I mean, there is questions I have about its veracity and its ability. It's as AI will hallucinate things, and what if it hallucinates a innocent person as a sex offender? What if it a lot of times these but it's a matter of technology, right? And so my question to you, Steve, was, you were in the force so long, you were in law enforcement so long, I'm sure this sort of thing came up where a new technology sort of scared people, and how was it handled in your department?
Well, it all depends. Why reinvent the wheel? It's here. And if it's working and nobody's complaining about it, I never heard any complaints about somebody's, that guy slipped through the cracks. Or again, I'm telling you, the sexual, registrants were the child predator. Those were hot. Come on. I mean, I'm telling you, you wanted to get, and there would always be periodic raids to go into, to check these guys that are on parole. And there would be a list. And if there was, again, one of these guys that hadn't registered, they're going to jail. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Now, if I was going to be looking into this, I would say, so tell me the advantages of AI, and then tell me the disadvantages, and we'll compare that to the system we currently have. And again, you could have safeguards within that AI that you would need a case number or something to refer to. So there would have to be an audit from time to time to make sure it wasn't being abused.
Yeah.
And again, obviously, you would have to have somebody that was held in high confidence that if it was abused, there would be serious consequences. Like you said, somebody running somebody that, they thought that it might be a sex registrant, and it wasn't. It was. But there are safeguards, I'm sure, that I would hope that they would come up with and say that'll never happen.
I mean, I'm like you. I'm not against technology either, and I know that certain things improve it. And I guess I feel like, is this another avenue of where now you're privatizing another criminal justice system? Like prisons have become privatized, like aren't a lot of those for-profit organizations? So now you're going to take, the sex offender registry process, and you're going to put it in a private company's authority to have that registry. And I'm not saying it's not a good idea, but you said, I mean, they're already registered, they're already in the system, unless they're actively going to enforce some new law, right? Where do they have to wear an ankle monitor or something? I mean, that doesn't exist, right? Unless they're,
to be clear though, this isn't, I don't know that Guthrie is trying to use AI for the and maybe we could look more into this for the registry, but to find sex offenders, I think, is what I read. And so that wouldn't really be part of the registry as much as maybe a way to disseminate through and investigate through a huge amount
Well,
of information that they get. You
all
know?
it says is what it says on his website is partner with Advanced Technologies Organization to locate and arrest child sexual predators from our neighborhoods.
Yeah. So that tells
So
me it's more of like looking through information, not actually looking through sex offender registries or having anything to do with sex offender registries, but actually finding evidence or any kind of like red flags to start cases. But I don't know.
yeah, but I mean, I
Again,
understand the need.
what
I guess
I
I'm
would have
just
to
wondering.
say, I don't, unless something has happened since I got out of law enforcement, I never heard that complaint. And, and I had contacts with law enforcement agencies throughout the United States. And that was never a topic or any advanced training that we would go to, as there's such a lack of information that we have on these sex registrants that we got to go to AI. I just,
Mhm.
unless something else has happened. And because an individual is registered, you got a lot of information on that individual. He's usually gone through the system, on parole or whatever else. But
Mhm.
that information is readily available, not only through dispatch, but again, you were talking about turning it into a civilian position. Your National Crime Information Center and, warrants, and most of that is handled through, for example, the Department of Justice.
Mhm.
So if it is getting abused, that's somebody not affiliated with your sheriff's office or your police department. If they come out and do an audit, they have they're being controlled by the state, not the local government. So if somebody was doing something they shouldn't be doing, depending on what the policy said, they could get fired because of it. Again, depending on what type of abuse it was and what type of information they were trying to draw from that system.
Well, I'm sure a lot of this will be cleared up once you talk to him, Jeff. We need to get more details on this, but I
Yeah.
think it is important to know the issues. And where I saw this come up was because I was looking at the issues with Nyberg were that he might not get elected. That was the biggest issue with him, that he was sort of a gatekeeper of this technology, or he was keeping it from coming in, this technology from coming in, insinuating that Asa Buck did not want it to come in, and he wanted his predecessor to be somebody that shared his values. So we'll find out more from these guys. I will interview them directly if they'll come on and talk to us about it, and we'll find out more about that.
Well, here's an idea. If
Yeah.
somebody was going to research that, where is it already in existence? What state, what city? And a lot of times a major city might already be running with that. Contact them and get their input on it. They're either going to tell you, hey, it's great. We have no problems. Ask them what the safeguards are. How do you prevent any abuse of this? Somebody getting in there and trying to retrieve information that they have no business retrieving. Again, it's not going to be just because of this sheriff or chief or whoever it is.
Right.
He can't be the first individual that wants to do this. And if he can come back and say, you know what, you can contact, hypothetically, the sheriff of in Las Vegas or someplace in major city in Mississippi, whatever, and all those folks come back and say, you know what, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. We would definitely promote something like, and there's nothing back, then run with it. But, if they start coming back and going, oh, well, that's the biggest mistake we made. They've already done your research for you.
So everything that I'm looking up that has to do with sex offenders or sex offender registries, and then we could probably, I guess, maybe talk about something else. Is
Move on. Yeah.
you've got a few you got the websites that show offenders by map that aren't really associated with law enforcement, but then you have there's another one that's a National Sex Offender Public website. Then you've got the FBI's website. You've got,
no, but this would be a particular technology. Look up AI technology and finding sex offenders and sheriff's department, and maybe you'll find more. But I am curious. What was the big? Yeah, look it up and ask Guthrie when you talk to him.
I will.
Or if I'm there, I'll talk to him as well. But Steve, there must have been new technologies. You were there, how about 35 years?
A little over 35 years.
Over 35. There must have been new technologies that came along and really like shook the boat.
Every new technology that came along
shook
the boat. Because,
what was the most memorable one for you, though?
Well, even when something really simple. When I first went into law enforcement, they had what they called a nightstick. It was just a straight stick that you carried for protection. Everybody had them. And then they went from that to, they had PR-24s, and they came up with a multitude of different type designs for what used to be just a straight stick that they called a nightstick. And different departments would go to them, like a PR-24 or whatever. And it was mandated that you would have to carry that and go through the training. And a lot of guys would say, what's wrong with what I got? It was just little things like that. And there was a time that they were more laxed with, for example, running somebody's registration off their vehicle plate. And because there were some really bad situations with that it turned into, you don't just go in there and tell dispatch, you want them to run a plate because some yak was seeing who was at his girlfriend's house or something silly like that. Or Joe Blow off the street used to be able to go into the Department of Motor Vehicles, hand them a license plate, and they'd tell you who the license plate belonged to and the address. Well, that's a damn good idea, and to stop that and control that, because people actually, there were some people that were murdered because of that, because the suspect found out where they resided. But coming back and telling, a good, honest cop that, we want a case number, and you're going to have to do this. They'd get upset. It's like, I haven't done anything wrong. Why do I have to jump through those hoops? And it was any change, and I think it's in the blood of all cops. It's just it just rubs you wrong. It's just it's a change.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Change in general is not something you, I'm sure, as a law enforcement officer, want to deal with on a regular basis. But like you said, it's very disruptive because you've got your rhythms, right? You got your rhythms. You got the way that you deal with whatever it is. Like I said, from a nightstick to doing some type of an administrative project or issue or whatever else. It's, I think, it's human nature that if it's not broken, don't fix it. And then a lot of times it's the shotgun effect where, one person screwed that up, so we're all going to have to change because of what that one guy did. And that's, I don't think, that's just law enforcement. I think with everyone, your car insurance is going to go up because that one guy out there ran into 3 parked cars, and now it's like, wait a minute, what did I do? So, yeah. And I think we're going to be dealing with that more and more with AI, right? Just take car insurance. What if they start incorporating AI into it and finding out, they find out more middle-aged men with beards get in wrecks more. And so my insurance goes up because AI found this information out. Like there might be something like that does.
Well, I mean it kind of not swaying off the topic, but in California, how they're going to implement the mileage tax on electric vehicles, they're going to obviously the state's going to have some way of tracking how you're driving in your car, reporting your mileage. It's not like dude, we're just getting in this place where, again, I'm pro law enforcement and I'm pro, but it seems like every time we turn around, like our rights and our privacy are just going away more and more and more. And even with that, I kind of back to the topic. I kind of have a question for my uncle, and we've talked about it before. And for me, and I'm sure just, and it's North Carolina, but maybe elaborate a little bit how you feel. We've talked about it. And I think that as far as these administrators that do not cooperate with federal law enforcement or are blatantly violating federal laws and the Constitution, and
we talk about like with ICE.
Well, with anything, I don't care whether it's ICE or, sanctuary city or whatever the deal is. I mean, maybe you might not like certain policies, I guess, but you're sworn to the oath of the Constitution. You're not sworn to, again, that's all political. You take an oath, just like in the military, you take an oath to the Constitution of the United States and the orders of the president as the commander in chief. You don't say, I swear to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party of the United States, and I'll enforce my laws according to what my political party wants me to.
I agree.
What do you think, Steve?
I agree 100%. However, there's two sides to the coin. And what bothers me as much is the people that should be enforcing or penalizing, or however you want to call it, the individuals that are basically breaking the law, going against the Constitution. If they're doing that and it's obvious, then do something about it. Do something about it. Start hooking some of these guys up. Whether it's a governor or set an example. Show the people that, you know what, we all have a right to our own opinion. And that's part of America here. But you're not going to invent stuff and say, for example, this is Sanctuary City. So what? You can call it Emerald City, and that doesn't. So what? You're still part of the United States of America. They haven't seceded from the Union. They're not the Confederacy. And look out here, what's coming down there? It's just, it needs to be stopped early on. And it's for whatever reason, they're not doing it. And I think if it was, then they'd probably knock a lot of that off.
I guess the problem is what do you do about it, though? Because it's so entrenched, and it has become entrenched because of past leaders, presidents, but also past Congress and past laws that have been passed. We don't really have much we can do, or I'll say there's not much that I can imagine as far as we can't even take money away from them because the power of the purse is in the House. And so it is confounding for for someone like me who's more conservative, and I look at this and I think, well, can we take care of this problem without flooding the place with basically swatting states? Is there a way to take care of this politically? And I found that I don't know if it seems harder, way harder to do it politically.
Well, again, my personal opinion.
And Uncle Steve, like I said.
Go ahead.
What's that?
Well, there needs to be.
I was going to ask. Go ahead.
Better lines of communication, and by that, I think the conservatives need to figure out a way to communicate better to get that point across. But because of this for example, sanctuary cities or states or whatever, then all of a sudden it starts turning into anarchy. And
Mm.
you can protest, more power to you. All you want to, carry signs, say whatever you want to say. But the bottom line is, you can't block the sidewalk. You can't block a road. You can't
Mhm.
destroy property. Those are all crimes.
Hmm.
People should be getting arrested for those. The flip side of the coin, somebody standing there with their sign and not blocking the sidewalk and preventing law-abiding citizens from walking through because they want to go to the store. There's ways that this can be done, and I understand it's the politics, and oh my gosh, if we do that, God, is that going to make us, maybe we'll lose votes or whatever the hell else. The bottom line is there's laws that are being broken, so enforce those laws and set an example and somehow get that message across to these people that maybe they're not getting the right message. I don't know. Maybe I'm optimistic, but it wasn't this way in the past. It seems to be getting worse. And um, I'm a firm believer that if you let them get away with it, it's only going to get worse.
Mhm.
Well,
You have to draw the line.
you've directly experienced this, if I'm not mistaken, back when the protests were going on with all the logging protests, right? When they were shipping in people from outside the area through, who were the organizations that used to do that? And that's what I was saying. I was like, this stuff's been going on forever, but back then they were arresting people. And maybe my second question is, I guess my thing is that it seems that some of these law enforcement agencies are like, well, we're not a federal law enforcement agency, so we don't enforce federal laws. We only enforce city laws, or we only enforce the state laws. And again, I'm just saying, well, aren't you law enforcement? And even, I'm not saying your job is to go out and every day you're going to do a federal agent's job. But if you were to come across a crime that's a federal crime, well, I don't know, like Schedule 1 narcotics, and you bust someone for cocaine because it's a Schedule 1 narcotic. I mean, if you go into a house and someone happens to be an illegal or whatever, is that not your job to report that? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm confused on the aspect.
Law enforcement takes an oath of office from the bottom line patrolman all the way up to the sheriff. And it's to enforce the laws, and you don't get to pick and choose what laws you want to enforce. That's not your job. And unless you see the law being broken by law enforcement, which in my entire over 35 plus years, I didn't see it. It's fairly simple. And when they start saying that, well, that's a federal law, I don't have to, I'm a city cop. Well, so the only laws you're going to enforce are city codes? Come on. Because there's the penal code is for the state, wherever that department is. So, well, okay, I guess we'll support state laws too. Okay, well, you don't think there's federal laws that overlap? I mean, it's silly. To me, it's a ridiculous conversation. And I think the majority of law enforcement would say the same thing. That no, you're not going to tell us that, especially if somebody's requesting help, that they need assistance. Well, we're not going to go out and help them because they're right. Well, no. And when you start getting to that position, it's time you probably should go look for another job someplace, because I guarantee you, if the shoe was on the other foot and you were requesting backup, that those ICE officers would be running. If they were there, they would come to assist. So,
Right.
Again, and I think when it goes back to the people, it's the way that this has been communicated to them, almost, for a lack of it, brainwashing, and it's silly. It really is. It's what's right and what's wrong. We have laws of the land, and they're trying to turn it into this anarchy And that's just chaos. And they're accomplishing that by making people think that I'm a city cop and that's all I have to enforce. And it's silly. They're wrong.
Hmm. Well, I really appreciate your perspective on this, Steve, and I'm glad to have you on. We're running out of time, but just really appreciate you coming on and giving us your perspective, giving us some insight. We're just a couple of curious guys that are just looking for answers, looking for information, and we like to talk about it. So it's great to have somebody with the depth of experience and knowledge like you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys. And anytime.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Well,
Appreciate it.
Jeff.
Wait, you just unofficially became our official expert.
Yeah.
No expert.
Well, we'd like to thank
35 years. Okay.
Yeah, expert on law enforcement for sure.
Thank you.
Politics too. One thing
Yeah.
I want to talk to you more about when we have you on again is like the politics of the police force. Different how that's different from politics of the sheriff's department.
Yeah, we can have that topic someday. It'll take a while to
Yeah.
discuss that one.
Go deeper on that one. Yeah. We thank Teresa Morton for tuning in, and she
Yes.
at one point she really liked what Steve was saying and gave us a little 100%. And we've had other people,
Appreciate it.
Christian McNeil, Paul McNeil, and Teresa all gave us a thumbs up. We appreciate you guys and appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah.
Hope you were
Look
entertained.
at
or
that.
got some
Big
out of what
day.
we said.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you to all 6 of our viewers. I appreciate that. And our thumbs up, and spread the word. And we're just going to keep having real conversations, and God bless and have a good evening.
Stay tuned as well. I did an interview with the Mayor Jerry. As soon as I get his okay, it's actually ready to be posted, but I just wanted to check with him, see if he could review it, and it will be posted tonight or tomorrow. An hour and 10 minutes. It's a long one.
Sweet.
All right. Good night, everybody. Good talking to you.
You bet.
See you next week.